Welcome to Beyond the Pulpit. My name is Eugene Shulikov. We're with the Church of Truth. I'm here with a good friend, Pastor Sergey Golovey, with the Christian Faith Church in Sacramento, California. He's a good friend. We've gotten to know each other the last couple of years. It's a pleasure. We've gotten to spend the last couple of days here as well, gotten to know
Yes,
a little
sir.
bit more of each other. We really are honored. We're glad you get to do this with us because this is a new step for us as a church, new territory. And I'll just give you a couple minutes, introduce yourself, share a little bit about your walk. I love hearing about how early you got involved in ministry. If you can just share a little bit on that.
Thanks for having me on. Pleasure is mine. I am delighted to spend the next few minutes with you. My name is Sergey Golovey. Was born in Ukraine, came here to United States as immigrant legally, which makes a big difference in the time and season we are in.
There's the clarity now.
And I was 18 at the time. Had no idea that within 1 year, God supernaturally will call me into ministry. So when we launch what is today known as Christian Faith Church in Sacramento, I was 19 at the time. Young and unexperienced, a lot of zeal, not that much wisdom. And but if not for grace, and we are grateful for the grace that empowers, grace that leads, grace that covers, grace that lifts up. And man, just looking back for the past 30 plus years, it was an amazing and nothing short of a miracle story. And to God be the glory. To God be the glory.
Absolutely. My thought, actually, after we spent some time yesterday, we split. I was on my way home and I was thinking about it. You being 19 years old, starting a church. So I'll back up. When my grandpa passed away, I was probably about 13. My dad was in his mid to late 40s. And interestingly enough, when grandpa passed away, all of grandpa's friends, everyone close to him, my dad drew to them. They immediately became, it was all of a sudden my dad was friends with guys that had 25 years on him. And as a young kid, it was so weird to me. I was like, what do you have in common? And now, as I'm finding myself in a place where I have guys that are 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years older than me, I'm soaking in it because there's no form of accountability if I just happen to be with guys my age, right? We're in the same age range where here, as I have guys that are older than me, they can even without actually verbalizing me, they can check me. Right? They can bring me to a place of accountability and recognizing certain things that I would not have been able to. At 19, did you have those people in your life, or did you? What was that like? Or were you just kind of picking it up as you were going?
I think it was both, and the reason I'm saying this because again we were fresh to this country and surrounded with like-minded friends, having so much passion and zeal for the things of God. And I would say that one of the reasons why we are still together, because we didn't come specifically for the purposes of building a church. We've been building life together and still do. And along the way, God brought people into our lives, more seasoned, more experienced, and I can go for hours and hours. Supernatural connections and connection that became long-time friendships and ongoing communion and just again having them in our lives and being enriched by their influence and expertise and knowledge and experience, it made us accountable. So just as you pointed out, I didn't have to have necessarily, check-in sessions with them. Hey, let's go and sit down and go through A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
It just came naturally.
Yes.
It was by default.
Would come naturally, just the mere fact that you are communicating and sharing your heart and having a feedback directly or indirectly. Correction would come, and encouragement would come, and expansion would come, you name it. And that's another importance of being in the body. And part of the body.
Yeah, it was actually a question that we had with the students. It's a common one. Well, what if I've had it was a word was said or it was spoken or I'm this this all my life. And it was, well, if you're not already engaging or these people are not already part of your life, you need to, as uncomfortable as it might sound to you. Just by default, by finding myself, I will sit kind of like we did last night. You'll sit at the table with guys that have 15, 20 years, 30 years more experience than you, and just by being in that community, just by hearing the conversations, you're checking yourself, right? Just by being there. So I am a huge
advocate that you can learn directly. You can read books. You can pick up things here and there from the fellowship. But also just a mere fact that you've been exposed to something has a great deal of information. And you just have to be dead in order not to notice. And I consider myself blessed to be exposed, for the lack of better expression, to a variety of ministries. And just being there, it's an eye-opening experience. Oh, so-and-so does church this way. Who said this is wrong? Unless you can see a completely different picture from the pages of the Bible. But, if you go to Africa, you are exposed to one school of thought as far as, culture of the church and missions and yada, yada, yada. You go to Asia, you have another exposure. You go to Europe. You live here in the United States, you even travel from state to state, and you can pick up something. It doesn't mean that you have to implement everything behind or from your pulpit, but I think it makes you a better person in a sense that you have a much larger heart, and you are not so quick to look at someone with condescending spirit and like, what is he doing? What is she doing? Well, we are in a body, you know.
And you've got more to filter it through.
Absolutely.
Absolutely more to filter it.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Well said. I'd also say just in confirmation, how much the Holy Spirit will actually release just from being in those certain areas without even your intention. I asked you a question before we even started. Sometimes this is just something that'll be lingering in the back of my mind, and you'll be in that particular conversation with someone at a particular time, and it'll never have come up verbally, but you'll receive your answer just because you're already there. We had one of our guys just share the other day, and he shared very well on specifically from the pastor's perspective, like a shepherd. And he made a comment that he says, if you as a sheep have strayed from the pasture or from the flock, you've likely already detached yourself from the pasture. You've already detached yourself from the shepherd. So, which is actually a really common conversation right now. I am the church. I am the body.
I am very grateful for this venue and for this opportunity, because when I say things from the pulpit, the things that I just said, people could perceive it as self-serving. Or you are the pastor.
You're the pastor.
That's why you are saying this.
This makes sense for you.
You are saying these things, but I am doing this for your benefit. I pray that the eyes of your understanding will be open, and you will get to understand it's not just a matter of knowledge of the head, but it should be a revelation in your heart. And there is benefit being in the body. This hand cannot function on its own unless it is in the body, and on and on. As a matter of fact, Paul clearly states that in his writings. So all of these declarations and statements, I am the church and you ain't. Buddy, you ain't.
Yeah.
Excuse my English.
No, go for it. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that wasn't my intention to talk about it, but I think I actually want to go that direction. Just because we have people close to me, close to my family personally, that it's in the past years, and it seems to be really common, more and more. And it actually more common with those that actually grew up in the church than outside the church.
Yes, sir.
So someone that has spent a prolonged time within the church, 10, 15, 20 years, and at some point something happened, some form of maybe offense or whatever that might be, that there's a moment where I've had my time, now it's just me, and I'm in what kind of from the pastor's perspective, aside from the obvious, you've already detached from the body, you're not necessarily committing yourself, and kind of like we talked about, you're not receiving in the corporate setting. What are some of the dangers? And maybe we go back into some of the practical ways of kind of unpeeling that for somebody that, because there's naturally a wall that's set up by, I've had enough, I've heard it, I know it. Anything specific that you can share to maybe that's somebody that's watching this, that's in that position. Hey, you know what? I haven't spent the last couple of years in church because this is where my heart's at now. Someone watching specifically that maybe it's geared for them.
And listen, I get it. In a sense, I do, because we've just gone through the season of COVID. It is official. 30% of parishioners in evangelical churches in the United States, or evangelical church at large, are gone.
Wow.
Nowhere to be found. If you talk to those people in one way or another, they have their own way of explaining what happened. And more often than
justified.
More often than not, that's precisely what you're gonna hear. That, I am the church. Fine. Corporate gatherings or gathering together is not necessarily. Okay. I've been hurt. I understand. In no way we are gathering of perfect people. But there is grace. Eugene, there is grace to see the beauty of Christ beyond the imperfection of people that body consists of. And there has to be that willingness on somebody's part to forgive and let the grace of God to work it out, to reconcile if you need to reconcile, but let it not be a means of justification. Why am I removing myself from the equation?
Yeah,
because being in the body carries short-term and long-term benefits. That is absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and it becomes a dangerous, slippery slope. And I think you made a great point, which was pretty spot on about the hypocrisy. Well, I haven't, so many hypocrites in the church. Well, come on board. Come on in.
There's place for one more.
Come on in. There's room for more. So, I think it's a very well needed conversation. More and more, as I think in social media tends to stray people a certain way. They'll follow a certain there's so many different directions followings go. They'll stray onto it just enough for it to hook them, and then they just kind of build the rest along the way.
I did not mean to interrupt.
Yeah,
but,
go for it.
I think, again, we are referring to the American church at large. Perhaps we foster that kind of attitude, and contributed to this notion of consumer mentality, even when it comes to the church. I come through the doors of this particular local body, and everybody owes me. They owe me that children church should be irreproachable. They owe me that youth ministry should be just, next level. They owe me that usher team should be on the top of their game, and list just goes on and on and on. And nobody pushes the brake and asks himself, perhaps God is leading me to make that children church better or perfect. Perhaps God is leading me here to make that youth ministry the very best it could be. Perhaps God leads me here to this body, even if it's seasonal, to contribute to the ushering team that it is always
kosher, right? Yeah, it's up
So
top of the line.
when God is directing, and Bible says the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. If God is directing my steps, again, I'll repeat myself, even if it is seasonal. So pause and ask yourself, what purposes I am here for, and how can I do my best with what I have to make this local body and the presentation of the gospel through this local body the best it can be. I tend to believe if everybody would approach this from this point of view, then we would not have this type of conversation here, because we are set bar so high, and our expectations when it comes to the local church are so high that everything should be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and if my expectations are not met, I have number of reasons to be mad. No, it's not the way it works. It shouldn't be.
And you can only say that from the perspective of a leader, because that's a pretty common. You see that quite a bit, right? The expectations are there, but not willing to fulfill the role, right? So, yeah, you're right. It's just to a degree a little bit of a selfish me desire.
There should be a volunteer revolution, and I would even say a volunteer revival, but that's something that this Spirit of grace does in us, because I don't approach church from this standpoint that I am here only to receive, but as much as I receive, I am here to
give, to serve,
to give back.
Yeah.
Again, nobody expects you to be to do this every Sunday, but everyone can volunteer to usher one Sunday or do Sunday class or children church or youth ministry. Just as little as you can contribute, and the bigger the pool of volunteers, the more beautiful presentation of that local body be.
Yeah, we actually, it's funny because this is part of my class.
Amazing.
And everyone seems to, and when you actually get there, the roles that everyone wants to immediately fill, funny, is the role with the mic. Right? Everyone wants to have stage time. Everyone wants to have mic time. Everyone wants to have, however, when you really look at the body as a whole, it wouldn't function without the organs behind the rib cage.
Absolutely.
Right? So there's always going to be there's always going to be the members that are doing things right where they're at, right? So everyone is looking for, and I mentioned, the scripture in something we taught on as well, is the Lord isn't going to say, well done, good and faithful podcast host. Well done, good and faithful worship leader.
Or pastor.
Well done, good and faithful, or pastor, right? Well done, good and faithful servant. Right where you are, where you're at, where you have influence, where you have the ability to speak, whether it's influence or just internally within the body itself. And I think that just goes overhead for many people, because there's immediately a role that is viewed when it comes to leadership in the church that has to be, maybe brings a glorification of some sort, right? Me.
Yeah.
Did I get camera time? Did I get mic time? So
was I featured in the service?
Was I featured? Yeah. Did I get recapped on Monday's Instagram post? So you're right, and that comes with a place of humility and humbleness to recognize that this is where you are. Listen,
this is the gospel. That's what is stated about Christ. He did not come to be served.
Yeah.
But he came to serve.
Yeah.
Period. End of story.
Yeah.
As he is,
Yeah.
so are we in this world.
Yeah.
And some people have more prominent position and quite often stage time and whatnot, but it does not make them bigger in the kingdom.
No.
At the end of the day, God is seeing our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the biggest presentation and the widest platform and the longest microphone time, but if your heart is prideful,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't do any good.
No.
And you can have some little grandma just doing her best in the nurseries and tending for those kids and praying for them and laying hands on them, perhaps without even providing them a lesson, but just watching over.
Never seen.
Never seen, with the heart of humility and faith that this generation will rise to the occasion and do great exploits for the kingdom. Guess what?
Yeah.
She will get her reward.
She will.
That's how kingdom operates.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked about it. We have those ladies. We have those ladies
Absolutely.
in the church. We have those ladies within the buildings that have just made it their commitment that I'm just going to pray and fast for the speakers in the church, right? Just like you said, that will your heart overflow with pride, and all of a sudden you're stepping into a place where a form of influence, recognition, and it becomes about you.
Yes, sir.
And there's women in this body that they just fast and pray, just for the speakers that are that have that time. So. I'm glad we got to share. I really wish we could go on. We're actually kind of nearing the cap of what we want to talk about. Maybe on the next one,
Absolutely,
we will share a little bit about what I had on my heart specifically. And I know that this is something that you've talked about in the past, and I
like the spontaneous moment.
I love that. Yeah, if you can just take off and just let it go, because it can go any direction.
Thanks for having me on. I really
pleasure.
Appreciate that.
Absolute pleasure. I love that you're able to come into our body. You're always a good friend, a personal friend. I appreciate our time together and hope we can do this again.
Thanks, Eugene.
Thank you, Pastor.